Survivor's ready. Go!
Travis spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You, Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you're making a deal with the devil here.
You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
Who the hell voted for me?
Chicken.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk Lime, or you understand that better?
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor, bringing you all the latest interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host, Ben Waterworth. Yes, hello everybody, and welcome once again to Survivor Oz, Australia's #1 TV and film podcast, as we come to you once again for an episode recap of the 30th season, Survivor Worlds Apart. We're into the final month of the season. It's gone by quickly. Episode 11. And of course, we have to discuss the latest episode with a former contestant. And it is a pleasure to welcome back to the show from the 15th season of Survivor China, the one, the only Leslie Nease. Leslie, welcome back to Survivor Oz.
Well, thank you. It's always a privilege to be here. So excited to talk about this episode. Wow.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Wow, indeed. I was saying to you just off air, of course, that we had you on last, 2 seasons ago, I should say, with Noah. He hosted his very first episode. So this is your second recap, but the first time I've been able to do a proper recap / interview with you since our initial interview, not including our Christmas episode. So it's been too long,
Right.
Leslie. That's what I'm trying to say here.
I know. I'm so excited. This is awesome.
Yes. Well, I always start off these recaps by generally getting a feel of what your thoughts have been of the season so far. So, I mean, what's your take so far on season 30?
Well, you know, it's funny. I think initially I wasn't too thrilled about it. And I don't know if I'm just like getting weary trying to get to know like a whole new group of contestants every 6 months. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's kind of nice when they have a couple of returnees because then you kind of have some sort of idea. But you have to get to know people. And it's a little hard initially to remember names and to remember faces. And, oh, my gosh, where did that person come from? And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting old. But that seemed kind of hard for me. But as their personalities are emerging, I'm actually really impressed with how this game is going. Like, we're seeing things we've never seen before. Like what Mike did, for instance, this past week. I mean, we've never seen anything like that before. And I thought it had all been done before. And so it was kind of refreshing to see a new kind of game move that nobody's ever done.
It's interesting in terms of the new players because we had such a stretch of returning player seasons that we just assumed that's how Survivor's going to be from now on. It's always going to be returning player seasons. But this is, the third season in a row with all new players. I think off the top of my head, it's the first time since Gabon, Tocantins, and Samoa that we've had 3 seasons in a row with all new players. But it's... Yeah. I mean, do you feel as though it's turned out well, though, that we were getting a bit tired of returning player seasons, that we needed to get some real new blood out there before we think about returning players again?
Well, I do think it's important to have new players. And I do think it's important to have returning as well. I think, you know, it's kind of it's hard to say because as somebody who was on the show, it's easy for me to say, I like seeing faces I know, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if I was still auditioning and hadn't been picked yet, I would be like, no, we need new people, you know, and I would be very adamant about that. So it's kind of hard for me because people who are still trying to get on the show are going to go, oh, shut up, Leslie. What, you know what I mean? But to be honest with you, the seasons where they have the returning players are way better as far as, you know, viewership. I think people who actually watch the show, if you ask around, like seeing the returning players. And it's because they feel like they already have someone to root for when you go in with players who've played before. But then they do something different and they turn into a different kind of play. It's kind of fun to watch that, you know. But I think if I had never made Survivor, I would be very angry if they kept putting, you know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of passion behind the people who've auditioned over and over again. And I don't want to see any returning players, but the bottom line, I mean, the viewership is higher when there's returning players because people already know, you know, they feel like they know somebody who's already there.
And I guess it's difficult as Survivor develops with these new player seasons because it always generally comes down to a big twist twist, doesn't it, now? Whereas, like, you can't just have, like, China. I mean, besides the epic location, it was just a standard season. There was no real, like, brains, brawns, beauty, or, white, collar, blue. It was just a normal season, whereas now we always have to have a gimmick. I mean, do you feel as though we're too gimmicky with Survivor? Like, can we not just have a normal season anymore?
I don't know if you can. I think, I think you can. I just don't think they will. I think they like having gimmicks. I think it's easier to sort of, identify with. Like when this particular season started, I think everybody who was watching sort of put themselves into, okay, I'm a blue collar person, so I'm going to root for them, and I'm a white collar person, and I'm a no collar person, and so I think that it's easy to sort of jump onto who you're going to root for without knowing who you're rooting for because you've already typecast these people. But I think in this particular season, it sort of backfired a little bit because it was sort of like a non-event that they were divided into that after a while because they all sort of, I don't know. Initially, I think they tried to be in that typecast, but then they just sort of broke free and became themselves. Yeah. And so it became a non-event after a while. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, I agree. And it was similar to, say, Kagayan with Brains, Brawns, Beauty, that after a few weeks it really was a nothing. I mean, we get that a bit, I feel. But, definitely this season. And it was a great gimmick at the start because I think really with, say, the no-collars, we really saw they were very no-collar. The blue collars were very blue-collar. The white collars were very white-collar. And kind of, I guess, they switch it all up with tribe switches and things like that, and it's always going to change things up. But I guess kind of now, the only real element of that is we constantly have Mike going, blue strong, baby, blue strong. Like, that's kind of really the only element of that we're getting now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is. And I love Mike. I mean, to be honest with you, initially not so sure I liked him. But, I like that he is really playing the game. And he's always thinking. He never stops thinking. And that's hard to do out there, because you're bored and there's not a lot going on. And the days feel like weeks. I mean, it's just so hard to just be on all the time. And I'm so impressed with how he's playing the game. And I think his blue thing doesn't really have anything to do with being blue collar as much as it has to do with being loyal to who he wanted to be loyal to from the beginning. And, that would have been whatever his tribe was, whether it be blue collar or, Fei Long. I think he would have been loyal and tried to be loyal all the way through. But there's just been so many kinks that have been thrown in it that have kind of pushed him to have to make other decisions.
And it's always difficult, of course, to remain loyal in a game such as Survivor. I mean, we know in talking to you from your time in China that you're obviously close with, Todd and Courtney and those likes, but they didn't keep you around because, it's the game and they had to take you out. So if it was about loyalty, then no doubt you would have been in the top 5. Absolutely.
And, it's funny because when I think back to that and I think back to the way that they treated me, it wasn't even so much Courtney, by the way. She didn't vote me out. But Todd, he kind of was over that. And he didn't feel like he had a choice. And I didn't take it personal, though. It was one of those things where this is a game. And if he wants to win, he's got a point. He's got to take these specific people with him. And then he won. So it actually paid off for him. But it is hard because I wanted to be loyal going in. And I would have been. And the impression, once the impression is made that you may not be loyal, there's nothing you can do. And I remember going into, when I was at my interviews in California, we all had to go into a room and we were watching old episodes of Survivor. And so all of the people who were possibly going to be picked for the show were in there. And we did it all day one day. And then they put us in the room again. And I was like, I'm taking my pillow. So I took 2 pillows. I'm like, this is stupid. I mean, I was uncomfortable. You're sitting on the floor. And so all of a sudden, then everybody else starts getting their pillows. And then Lynn calls me in. She's the overcasting. And she's like, Leslie, what are you doing? You're bringing attention to yourself. You're already going to have they're just looking for a reason to vote the first person out. You can't have pillows. You're going to be the pillow lady. And I thought, are you freaking kidding me? Are you serious? And so from that moment on, I realized that everything you do could be a reason to vote you out.
Yeah. Yeah, we hear that a lot through interviews and that, and generally something I like to bring up now is pre-game when you're in sort of lockdown and you're not allowed to talk to each other, impressions you're forming of people and things like that. Because I know through all the interviews we've done in this show, there have been bonds made purely by a look or a, I don't like you because of how you were the night before we went out to filming. You were too loud or you did this. So you were already pissing me off the night before. Like, we've heard it all before. And that's interesting, though, that Lynn Spielman thinks that your entire game could be affected by bringing pillows.
Well, she's like, they're going to say, you can't even be comfortable on a hard floor. How can you go do Survivor? I said, listen, when I'm on Survivor, that's different. I'll make do. I said, but right now I have access to pillows and I'm stupid if I don't bring them in. Clearly it was a good idea because now everybody's doing it, And she just laughed. She's like, you are just asking for it. And I was like, I don't care. It's like, for crying out loud.
It's just a pillow. Come on.
Yeah. And I was more comfortable.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. That's what we want to hear. Now, I mean, with Mike, though, we saw last week he made a decision which seems to have really put him on the outs. The whole situation at the auction and turning around and not buying the family letters before quickly changing his mind to do it. Do you feel that was the moment that really put him on the outs? And do you feel if he doesn't win this game, that's going to be the one key moment that really stuffed it up for him?
I think he ended up doing the right thing. But like I said, they're looking for a reason to vote you out. So you have to be so careful. And this is the thing about Mike is he's very passionate and he acts before he thinks sometimes. But then as he thinks about it, he changes his mind. And I like that he's humble enough to do that. Like, he's not just going to stick with it and, like, stay with his pride and say, I'm not budging. He's smart enough to realize that in order to, to play the right social game, you have to make those tough decisions. And so I don't know. I mean, I think Mike's problem is that he's really good. And they're going to want to get him out because of that. Because if he makes it to the end, everybody knows he has made some really good moves. In the game. He's
obviously strong in challenges. He's won 2 immunities in a row, and he's got the idol, which he faked playing for Shireen only for her to go home. Do you think that was a smart move? Do you think he should have played it to keep Shireen around to have an extra ally, or was that the right move to at least flush out some fractures within the alliance of 6?
This is probably the question he's been rolling around in, since it happened several months ago, but I understand what he did. And actually, when I first watched it, I was really glad he didn't play it because they're waiting to vote him out. You know what I mean? But then I thought, wait a minute, if he would have played it, that would have been such a great, because he realized quickly that 2 people at least were ready to flop and come over back to him. And he would have had Shireen and he would have had their respect. But the truth is, because of the respect, Survivor's so weird. If people think you're good, they want to get rid of you. So in a way, I don't know. I think he would have had the numbers to at least make it through one more, but Mike is too good to not have that idol in his pocket.
It's a double-edged sword because no matter what now, he's final 6 because even if he doesn't win immunity next week, he's got the idol, so that, he's guaranteed to be there at least another week. But I guess then had he kept Shireen, Tyler goes home because the next week, of course, there's 7 left, which is a very key power move week in Survivor because you've got a shift in numbers possibly. You've got Shireen. He only needs to pull 2 people aside to flip some numbers. So I don't know, if you're in his position, what do you do, Leslie? Do you keep Shireen or do you keep the idol?
Honestly, it wouldn't have been about keeping Shireen as much as it would have been getting rid of Tyler. Mm-hmm. Because Tyler's great, and he's been playing very strategically, very quietly, very good. He and Carolyn, I think, they've known what they're doing from the get-go, and Mike has too. But Mike's a lot more entertaining about it. You know what I mean? Like, he's so passionate, and it's so fun to watch when he, just kind of blows up and then goes, "Oh, what was I thinking?" But the other 2 are just so level-headed and so smart about everything they're doing. So I think either of those 3 would be just ideal to win the game, totally.
It's a good way you put that because Mike's great TV and he's also a good player. So I mean, of course, he's going to get a lot of screen time and you're going to see a lot of what he's doing. But then if you look at Tyler and Carolyn, who they've been tight now for a long time. They've been very level-headed, as you said. And Carolyn, of course, let's not forget, she still has an idol herself. So she's kind of there and thereabouts. So I mean, with those two, say Mike goes in a couple of weeks and we have this Final Four scenario of say Rodney, Tyler, Carolyn and you'd say Dan probably would be there. I mean, you would probably say that Tyler and Carolyn, out of those four, they're looking good to become millionaires.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Tyler and Carolyn and Mike, if Mike can, I mean, Mike's got it. Here's the thing. Mike would deserve it so much more because he has had to work so much harder than anybody else. And that's why they're going to want to vote him out. And that makes me mad because I don't want him to go. But it is true. And so I think he would be my favorite to win. But I think logically, it'll probably be either Carolyn or Tyler. And if it was between those two, I think Carolyn would win. I think just because she has been very loyal, very strategic. And Tyler's been so quiet about how he's doing it.
Yeah, and we had that, there was a couple of weeks ago too I can't remember, it might have been the Kelly vote off the top of my head, when he held the vote up and he's like, I have no idea what's going on. And like, I mean, clearly it was a confusing vote, but at the end of the day, does that go to show that Tyler, even though he's playing well, there are elements of his game which aren't exactly all there?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them, whether they seem like they're together or not, when you're out there, you're rolling the dice every day. You're assuming that people are loyal. You're assuming that this is the way it's going. But really, you don't know. Nobody knows for sure. And so it is hard and it wears you down. And I got to mention Rodney because he is cracking me up. I don't know if it's the editing.
Oh, I love Rodney. I love Rodney.
Why does he think he's controlling everything? It is hilarious. He is so adorable. I love that guy. But he clearly, according to the edit, now I'm going to add that because I know when you're in there, they can make you look like an idiot. But he's really not in control at all. Do you know?
Yeah, it's fascinating with Rodney because he's so, it's so bipolar in terms of how you seem to judge him each week because, he has these blow-ups, he has these moments, but then you'll have a week where he's actually kind of level-headed. Like, he's got his 3 C's that he keeps bringing up. He's cool, calm, collected. And there have been moments where he really has held back, and it just seems like he is keeping his head around. I think the thing with Rodney is that at the end of the day, if he gets to a final tribal council, will people vote for him? Because I'm not really sure if he has the respect of people. I think he's well liked, but do people respecting him enough to make him win the game over whoever's left next to him?
Well, Rodney reminds me of the kind of person that if he makes it to the final 3, I don't think he would get any votes. You know what I mean? Like if they do the final 3 and they always have that one person who gets no votes and it's like, oh gosh, this is embarrassing kind of thing. Yeah. And it's only because of the way he's playing. Now listen, I love the guy. Don't get me wrong. I think he's adorable. He's fun to watch, but I don't know. My husband and I, every time we watch, we're like, what does he mean he's in control? Unless they're just not showing it in the editing. I don't get how he would think he was in control.
Well, that was a big red flag. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Generally whenever they show a confessional of somebody saying, I'm in control of this game, 95% of the time, that person isn't winning the game.
You are so right about that. And you think about even the 3rd episode of Survivor China, the very first, before it even went to the theme music or whatever, they had an interview with me and I said, well, at least we know if we go to tribal, John Rivera is going to be the first one out. And then it went, and I was like, oh crap, open mouth, insert foot. But
John Rivera kept saying, didn't he, that he was in control, I think from memory. Didn't he at least came across
delusional.
That way.
He was delusional. I mean, it was hilarious, but I think you get those egos in there and they can't imagine that life doesn't revolve around them.
Yeah.
And, but please don't get me wrong. Rodney's adorable. He's fun to watch. I'm trying to understand it. It could be the editing though. It really could.
I think, if he got to a final tribal council and was next to Dan and Will, he's probably going to win. But like, he's got a. I mean, and
just
probably Sierra too, because I don't know if people even think she's doing much out there. But I mean, if he's up against anybody else, I think there's definitely Mike, Carolyn, and Tyler will definitely take votes away from Rodney. So
yeah, that's a good point. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
I mean, with you look at, say, I mean, we may as well talk about Dan, because I mean, there's a lot to talk about him as well.
Dan.
What's your take on dear old Dan?
Dan is living his dream, and it's so stinking adorable. He is so happy to be out there, and everything that he does, every move that he makes is so epic in his mind. I just love it. He's hilarious to watch because I'm a fan of the show and have been since it started. And so when I watch him, it's like that's what a true fan plays like with their heart, even though they think they're playing with their head. And I think Dan is definitely. I don't think he would win by any stretch, but I do think he's making an impression. But he has a hard time. I think he's such a follower. He's not a leader, and he always has to have somebody that he kind of holds on to and follows. And I think that's going to be detrimental for him.
And he has a real way of just irking people off, I guess. And like I mean, the whole situation with Shireen, where like it was really awkward. He sat next to her and he's like, "I'm really sorry for last night." And Shireen's like, "What are you sorry for?" And he just had that awkward pause, and he's like, "For whatever it was that made you cry."
Yeah. He's trying to. Okay, this is it, Ben. He's trying too hard. Yeah. He's trying too hard to play the social game. Sometimes the social game, if you push too much and you try too hard, it looks desperate. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing through that. And I think that that's not going to be good for Dan. But I mean, he's playing with his heart, and I can tell you that's never a good way to play. I know that's how I played, and you just can't. Not when you're on Survivor.
And I guess at the end of the day, like, no offense to Dan, I don't know the guy, but he doesn't come across as a guy who is overly social and sort of good in those situations. So I guess to try and make do with that, as you're saying, like, he's trying to be very social, but just the type of personality he is, it seems to be a personality that would easily rub people the wrong way if you don't kind of get that type of personality, if that makes sense.
Well, and you know, him and Shireen talk a lot about other seasons, and this is how it was done, and this is what you can expect, and da-da-da-da. That grinds on people's nerves out there. And, I mean, when we were there, we weren't even allowed. The producers would say, stop talking about other seasons. This is Survivor China. I mean, we just weren't even allowed. So that it seems like they've either got new producers or they've stopped even trying because people do it so much.
Yeah.
But it really kind of irritates the people who weren't on the show before or who haven't been fans of the show or haven't watched it, but they're trying to play the game, and you know, you're having your own little conversation about this season or that season and this player, and they're like, what are you talking about? Just shut up and play the game, you know?
Yeah.
So that can be hard for socially. It kind of makes you look like you have no life except Survivor. You know what I mean?
I know a lot of people like that, Leslie, so I hope they don't ever get on Survivor.
I know. But, and I love those people. I was one of those.
They're great. They're great people. Nothing against those people. But like, it's, I mean, Todd clearly was a super fan. He was kind of billed as the first super fan to win the show, and yourself were a big fan. And I mean, so would they deliberately shut you down? So if you and Todd were like, "Oh my God, season 12, I love this person," like, was there a producer to step in, going, "Shut up"?
Yep. One producer in particular, David, he would be like, all right, Leslie and Todd, we know you're fans. Knock it off. Stop it. You know, and we were like, man, it was just so fun to find somebody who was so excited about it, like the way I was. But yeah, after about day 3, we just stopped talking about it because we kept getting reprimanded.
I find that fascinating because, like, I know season 2 was a prime example where they kept talking about season 1, and I can maybe understand it back then because they were really trying to make season 2 separate from season 1. But like, I don't know, like, I would assume it's an easy thing to talk about, as you've sort of mentioned. I mean, you're bored out there. You've got not a lot to do.
Are.
Like, why can't you? And it seems to be like, I mean, we had so many fans on this season. We've had, you know, fans play this game now. I mean, a show that's been on there for 15 years, of course you're going to have fans playing this game. And clearly it must be the case now where, they let people openly talk about it. So I don't know if that's maybe Survivor celebrating its legacy to kind of have these, because we get so many mentions nowadays of past seasons and contestants, and it's not just by Jeff, like, you know, players will say it openly now. So maybe
very different.
Yeah, maybe it's just a case now, 15 seasons after your season, Leslie. Like, let's celebrate the fact that Survivor's been on for 30 seasons rather than shutting you all up every 3 seconds from David.
Yes, that could be, and it could have been too. I don't think that producer is still with them, so it's just been his way of storytelling. You know, he may have just not been a fan of that. So you don't know what the deal is, but I think it's interesting because I think most people who watch it at this point have been watching it for a while, and I think I don't know. I've heard rumors that the next one's going to be some returning people. Well, I guess we'll see.
Yes, well, if the rumors are to be true, Leslie, we're going to be finding out in the coming days. Pretty much this will be confirmed. So, and there's a strong rumor that somebody from your season is very much in the hunt to be on that season. So,
sweet, yeah, I heard PG is. So hopefully,
yes, indeed.
And I noticed that Kelly Wigglesworth is putting a lot out in social media.
Can I just say, just take this moment out because I just love Kelly Wigglesworth to death. And
I do too. I would love to see her again.
If the rumors are to be true and it's a voting campaign and like the fans will vote from a shortlist, we've already decided that we're going to be purely backing Kelly Wigglesworth, and that's nothing against all the other people because for the most part, all the people who are on this shortlist we love. But Kelly Wigglesworth to return to Survivor after 30 odd seasons and 15 years would make me and a lot of people a very happy person.
Well, I think it's time, and I think she's awesome. So I'm with you. I'll be in your little campaign.
Please do.
She's really good. Plus, I think it's really important to add some people from the early seasons, just because it has been a long time. Yep. You know, they're going to play different, and they're going to be entertaining because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so different than when we first started, you know, and just to kind of hear that perspective, I think would be really cool.
And they generally go far. I mean, obviously, Jervis made it to the final tribal council, Scoopin when he returned. And the thing is, like, too, like, let's obviously Kelly aside, like, I mean, you know, on this short list, and apologies again for people, if you're not wanting spoilers, it's going to be announced in a couple of days anyway, so it's kind of going to be hard to avoid it. But I mean, you know, Jeff Varner's on this list, Kimmy Kappenberg, you know, Teresa Cooper from Africa, like, these really old school players that just, for people like us, Leslie, have been watching this since day one, it just warms your heart.
I'm geeked out about it.
Yeah, well, that's
totally
geeked out. There you go. That's a perfect way of putting it.
Yep, and you know, I can confirm I am not on that list, so that makes me very sad. But you know, maybe one day.
Well, we had Troy Zan on last week, and he's very much on that list. And sort of, I kept trying to hint at it, but he was very well at covering his tracks and not sort of bringing it. I understand, obviously, the you know, the confidentiality behind it all, but
of course,
yeah. I mean, I will say we've had the pleasure of having Kelly Wigglesworth on this show a couple of years ago, and you know, that was back, and I don't know if she still is in Mexico, but we legitimately had to track her down through some random yoga website because she lived on a remote beach in Mexico, and in chatting to her at the time, she said that she had never had a desire to return. It was only recently that she had kind of thought that maybe it's time for me to actually play, because she'd never watched. I don't think she'd ever watched her season. She'd never watched any other episode after she'd been on it, and completely just dropped off the face of the planet with Survivor. So, look, we nearly got her on the show for the Christmas episode that you were on, and we're trying to obviously always get her back on, and it'd be great to get her on before she goes back out again. But it'd be interesting to see how she plays if she's successful, because, you know, she's the original runner-up. She was one vote away from beating Richard Hatch, and
yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, I would love to see that. Oh. And you know, if you're listening and you want to write my name in, maybe that could, you know, I'm just kidding. I'm sure nobody even remembers me, much less would.
All our listeners to this show, Leslie, both of them right now are getting behind that campaign. I'm telling you, they're sitting there. Yes, both of them have just tweeted in, "Vote Leslie." Done.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh. I would love to play again. I just, you know, I played so much with my heart last time, and I would love to play with my head this time. And, you know, but you do what you do. And you mature and you grow, and then you go, oh, I shoulda, coulda, didn't. Mm-hmm. And so I think everybody who's played would want to play again, except a very few exceptions.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, on the topic of super fans playing the show, I mean, it's a question that I know we've asked plenty of times, and I think no doubt we've asked this to you, but as a super fan playing the show, when you play the show, does being a fan of Survivor help or hurt you when you play the game?
You know, I think it helped me. I know you're going to go, really? Because you were voted out in episode 3. It helped me in that I was more prepared as far as what I was wearing, what I could, what to expect, all of that. But it hurt me in that when you're a super fan and you get out there, you are so stinking excited. You're living your dream. You can't help but be a dork. I mean, you really just are such a dork out there. And it's, anytime you draw attention to yourself in the beginning, it's not good. And, Todd and I had those conversations, so we bonded. So, all of that, people saw that and they didn't like it. They didn't like the relationship that we had. And, so of course they convinced him we got to get rid of her first because we were a tight little group. And so, I think you have to just be really careful. If you're a super fan and you get out there and you finally get to play, like, hold your cards very, very close to your chest. Don't show them because they're just looking for any excuse to vote you out.
And I found that interesting. Like, we saw obviously Shireen, very much excited about it. I found that more interesting with Max, given that he's literally a professor of Survivor. That he kind of was how he was with being a fan. I mean, kind of backtracking a little bit and going back to Max. Do you think that was his mistake, and he should have kept it, like as you said, kept a little bit closer to his chest?
Oh, Max, his big problem was that he's really good at numbers and figuring things out and strategy, but he's terrible with the social game. I think you can get so caught up in how you're going to play that you forget that really most of it is social. Mm-hmm. And you can't be too well liked and you can't be not liked at all. You have to find a medium. And if you're so busy strategizing and finding out numbers and how many we need and this and that, you're going to totally miss the social. I don't think even Max realized what was going on around him socially. I don't even think he noticed.
And as they say, of course, those who can't do teach. So I think that works out well. I mean, on a side note, actually, I mean, obviously we've mentioned Todd a few times. I just want to quickly bring up Todd. I mean, we know Todd's obviously, we talked about it last time, his battles and all that sort of stuff. Have you caught up with Todd? I mean, how do you know how Todd's doing at the moment since kind of he's back out into the world again?
I haven't really caught up with him. We just kind of touch base on Facebook. I would say I'm closer to Courtney and Jamie and Eric than anybody else, and Sharia. But I mean, I'm definitely in Todd's corner. I pray for him all the time. I love that kid. And, I hope to see him again soon and be able to give him a big hug. He's been through a lot. It's been a really tough year, but Todd's a survivor and he's going to do this. I know he is. I just have all the faith in the world in him. And I know that, that God's going to get him through this.
Well, we definitely pass out our well wishes to Todd, as always. We've been lucky enough to have him on the show a couple of times as well, and big fans of Todd we are here in Survivor Oz. So, Todd, if you're listening, we hope all is going well for you. Now, I want to bring up, we've talked about Shireen, we've talked about Will, but obviously got to raise the whole Will Shireen event that happened last week. It kind of went into this week slightly into Tribal Council because, Shireen raised it again and Will wouldn't apologise. I mean, just kind of backtracking a week, I mean, your take on the whole Will going off at Shireen and how it was all handled, do you think Will just went a little bit too far?
Oh, yeah. Will totally lost his head. I mean, he totally lost his head, and he just started shooting from the hip and saying things that I think they weren't processing through the filter. and because, maybe pride, I don't know why he won't apologize. I mean, what's the big deal? You know that was rude. It was terrible. But, people get on your nerves on like a whole nother level when you're out there. And, they've lasted a whole lot longer than I ever did. And so I can't imagine it being any higher of a level than how, John Robert got on all of our nerves, like so bad. And it was really hard. And I was only on there 9 days. I can't imagine putting somebody on your, having to be with that person all the time and just having to keep your mouth shut, and I think he just kind of lost his head. And I think he's he really needs to humble himself, because she is a vote, and if he makes it to the end, he's really going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and the thing that still is kind of annoying me about this whole situation, and I agree with everything you just said, but I think, again, kind of going on a little bit of what we were talking about last week, it's clear that Will overstepped the line, but I think that a lot of people on social media are now overstepping the line with Will, with the comments that have been directed at him. I think there's an element of being able to be disappointed in one's actions, but for you to then turn around into bullying Will and saying some terrible things against him. I have seen some horrible remarks labelled against Will, and it's not an excuse.
No, there's never an excuse to do that. I think probably one of the hardest things about being on Survivor was the backlash from people who sit at home and do nothing but, troll. I mean, it was so hard. And I literally had to go, okay, Leslie, this is a, middle-aged guy sitting in his basement and he's naked, and who cares what he thinks? You know what I mean? Like, I had to literally tell myself that, because you start to go, oh no. And then you at one point you just can't even look. And, to be honest, Will made a mistake, but I think every one of us need to throw that stone down and not throw it at him, because we've all done that. We've all messed up like that and said things we shouldn't have said. And, the problem with Will is that it was on national TV in front of, millions of people who were ready to throw stones at him. And I feel bad for him for that. But, I also feel bad for Shireen. I mean, what she went through as a child, that's awful. I mean, and for him to make light of that,
Yeah, and I agree. And, I could imagine, again, going on Survivor, it's never a pleasant experience, that sort of stuff. You were lucky in a way that you kind of weren't around when Twitter was there and,
yes.
and Facebook, I guess you could say. But, I know kind of, we had Dawn on after Caramoan when the whole Brenda situation happened, and, just how much that affected her. And I think there's obviously different elements to this, because Will hasn't apologised on the show that we've seen. I mean, we've heard things that Dan has said on social media that Will did apologise, but we don't know if that's true or not. And then Will kind of is very quiet on social media anyway. But I think, and again, I'm not trying to do this to start anything with Shireen fans or anything, and I'm not saying negative things against Shireen, because obviously what Shireen went through was terrible, exactly what you said. But I think kind of there's an element that Shireen is kind of fueling the flames a little bit, and I just feel that this situation can be easily resolved. It can be an apology, done, move on, and you'll still have your trolls going on. But I don't know, I just feel like Shireen is still fueling the flames a little bit too much with some of the things she said on social media. That's just my opinion.
Well, I haven't seen what she said. I try to not, do too much of that. It gets me emotional. Yeah. But the bottom line, I wish people would just, this is between Will and Shireen.
Exactly.
This isn't, why do we feel like we have to, have a part in any of that? That's just really none of our business. Yes, it was on national TV, so it kind of makes it sort of public, but it's still a very personal, and I'm sure there's a lot of regret on both of their parts. And the funny thing about Survivor, Ben, you'll see at the end, everybody's going to be friends.
Yeah.
No matter what goes down, no matter who you're mad at and who you think is horrible and whatever, they're all going to be friends after this, because you go through this life-changing adventure that is literally the only people in the world who know how you felt out there are those people. And nothing gets in the way of that. Nothing. Not even stupidity. They're going to be fine. We just need to let them work it out and keep our noses out of it.
And it's pretty much sort of been put out there by a lot of people from this cast. I mean, they're super close, this cast. And it's been labelled... we had Lynn Spillman on the show just before this season started, and she kind of said that this season is very comparable to One World as having possibly the closest cast, where she hasn't seen a cast so close with each other. Sort of everybody likes each other, and they get together and they do things and all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, they're obviously very close. So I'm guessing situations have been sorted, but now that's airing, there are things that are coming out. I'm not too sure. I mean, what was your take on Shireen overall, though, as a player and as a character and all that sort of stuff? Because, I mean, she was a very different person, I guess, in terms of what she brought to Survivor. She was fun, she was entertaining, she was, frustrating. There's so many different things you can say to describe her. Did you like Shireen?
I don't know how to describe how I felt. Like, it wasn't that I didn't like her, and it wasn't that I was like, oh, she's my favorite. She brought out something in me. I guess because I'm a mom and I'm very maternal, she seemed kind of wounded from the beginning. And so Shireen was kind of like I wanted to protect her. Like, I just felt like she was in a game that she really respected and really liked, but I felt like she was in over her head. Like, there was more going on underneath of her, and I sensed that from the beginning. So I had a hard time really knowing how to feel. It was weird.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, I loved her pre-game. Like, her pre-game stuff was like great, and she seemed to be a real kooky character. But yeah,
right.
The last few weeks I sort of went off her a little bit. But she has a huge fan base. Like Shireen, I think online the biggest fan base is for her. Like all the Survivor super fans and kind of all these communities. You know, she is the goddess to them. So.
Really? That's exciting. Yeah. I didn't know that.
No,
good for her.
Very active
well,
out
I'm
there
glad
too.
to hear that because, a lot of times people who kind of are carrying some stuff, they end up being raked over the coals. And I'm really glad to hear the community is behind her and not, putting her down or anything. That makes me happy.
Very much pro Shireen, very much anti-Will. That's probably the easiest way.
Come on. I want you to, everybody who's listening, think back to a time when you said something really stupid, and then imagine that 15 million people are watching you now. You know what I mean? Like, you got to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. He screwed up, but he'll do better. I'm sure he's a nice person. He let the game sort of get into his head.
Yeah, definitely. We talked a little bit about in terms of the idol play and all that sort of stuff with Mike. I mean, the key thing obviously to come out of this is that at the end of the day, both Tyler and Will voted for Dan. So they've voted outside of the alliance. They got panicky, and we saw a preview next week that's going to affect it. Do you think the alliance of six will fracture based on what Tyler and Will, how they voted?
I have no idea. I mean, I thought I knew what this game was going to do, but it's just so unpredictable this season as far as what's going to happen. It all depends. If Mike can somehow bring his alliance back together, then yeah. And if they can see, I mean, really, if they're smart, they're going to see that Tyler is he's poised to win this game. And they need to, I mean, if they want to win, they got to get rid of him soon. They got to get rid of him and Carolyn and Mike. And then it's anybody's game. Be
interesting if they were, say, the next three to go and we had a final four of Dan, Rodney, Will, and Sierra.
I know. Like, then it would be like, who would we even root for at this point?
Come on. Rodney's got that in the bag. I mean, like...
Okay. You just love it. You're such a Rodney fan. It's so cute.
You have no idea. Like, it's strange that... He reminds me so much of my favourite character from what I call my favourite TV show, Third Watch. It's the characteristics are so similar, and like I don't know, he's just gold. Every time he's on TV, he's just fantastic to watch. And
well, he is. I mean, he definitely is. He's fun to watch for sure. I don't know. And
we have some good hashtags with Rodney. We had hashtag Rodney time this week, but I think we should have had hashtag itchy beard, because I loved his confessional when he's complaining about having an itchy beard. We've never had that before, Leslie. I've grown a beard before. This is something that I'm sure you've never grown a beard yourself, Leslie. If you have,
oh no,
well done.
Thank God.
I've grown a beard before, and it might look okay at a certain point, but damn, it's itchy.
He's funny. I mean, he's definitely entertaining. And I think the longer he's on there, the more his filter goes away. Like, he just says stuff. And you're like, really? Did you just say that? That's hilarious. So, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Rodney would have that probably if it was those four in the end.
I have to, I've mentioned her name a couple of times, but I often forget she's on this season. Sierra. Do we have anything to add on Sierra? She's on this season, Leslie.
I know. Well, she's made it far. It's so funny because, like, I always feel silly being in a seat of, okay, here's what I think of the season when I only lasted 9 days. So, like, everybody on this show right now lasted way longer than me. So who am I to say they don't deserve to be there? But, she's playing the game a little more than she was before. I think we saw our first confessional with her last week, right?
Oh, something like that. She's getting barely nothing.
Yeah, so I think she's starting to play, and it's funny. I could have probably picked out who would be here at this point based on their confessionals in the beginning. Mm-hmm. You know, because we weren't seeing hardly any of her. Yeah. And so I even told my husband, "Oh, she's going to make it far," because we don't see her at all.
Yeah, which means there's one, isn't there? There's always that one that kind of goes that far. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fast. Like the one shining moment I will say. I'm not sure if you sort of read too much into the players' backgrounds before the season started. Sierra's profession is a professional barrel racer, so she actually got an opportunity to barrel roll this episode. So hey, it worked into her favour slightly for once. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It was pretty impressive, I got to say.
Yeah, she was quick to be like, "Hey, everyone, let's do this," and well, it nearly worked. So. Yeah, it's interesting, kind of saying like how there's always that that one or two people that get that far, and you don't really see a lot of them. Your season obviously was unique because for the most part, I mean, maybe you could slightly put Eric a little bit into that category because he didn't have the biggest edit, but even you still feel that you saw a lot of Eric anyway. So like your season was good in that pretty much everybody got a decent edit.
I think so, and even me, I was only on there 3 episodes, but I felt like they were really fair about, telling my story and not just being like, oh, who's she? And she's gone. I mean, they were able at that point, and I don't know if it was different editing or what, but I think to really tell a story. And one of the producers, Doug, I can't remember his last name, but he was one of like the executive producers. He told me that each episode is like a chapter of a book that is being told. Like the book is called Survivor China. I was chapter 3. And so they want to tell our story in each chapter. And, they were really good about doing that. I think every chapter really was that person's chapter. And I don't see that as much anymore.
Well, just scrolling through the confessional count, I mean, we base a lot of sort of airtime on how many confessionals people got. I mean, your season... and I'm not going to go through everything here to get the utmost statistics, but yours is unique in the fact that everybody on your season, including yourself, got double digits in terms of confessionals with the exception of Ashley and Chicken, and even them, for the first 2 episodes, like, Ashley got 6 confessionals in her 2 episodes, Chicken got 5 in his 1 episode, then every other person got at least double digits. So you got 16 in 3 episodes, so you got the same amount as Dave. You got more confessionals than Aaron and Sharia. You got one less than Frosty, and he lasted like double the amount of episodes you did. So there you go. Well, you got a very good edit, Leslie.
I did. You know what though? I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I do. I'm already in sort of the storytelling business, and that they really look for that when they interview you. They want to make sure you can tell the story, and if you tell a story in an entertaining way, you're going to get more confessionals. It's not just about how you play the game and how you are socially. You've got to go in there and be able to tell a story and be funny and be real and be authentic and say things that nobody else would say, and once you do that, you'll get a good edit.
Well, here's a thing for you, really quickly scrolling through it. China is on the same page as Borneo and the Australian outback in that all but 2 people got double digits in terms of confessionals. One season, interestingly enough, beats that, and it's a season I wouldn't have picked out of it. Redemption Island, apparently, everybody with the exception of Krista got 10 or more confessionals, and that was a pretty cruddy season.
Yeah. You're right. I don't know what that's about.
Wow.
But, maybe it's because everybody was evenly. Maybe you can't do that. Maybe you do have to sort of pick out the strongest personalities and let them carry the story.
Yeah.
Maybe that's more entertaining. I don't know.
Amazing thing here, too. Sorry, I'm harping on about confessionals. Courtney only got 23 for the entire season of China. You got 7 less, only 7, than the runner-up. In your final episode, you got 8 in your final episode, which besides the finale, that is equal with PG in terms of most confessionals in an episode in your season. Congratulations.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Do I get an award for that? Or
Sure, we'll make something up. We'll make a category in our Oscars this year purely based on that.
I remember, though, when I would come back, it was so funny. Maybe the producer liked me. I don't know. But when I would come back from a confessional, John Robert would say, Leslie's going to win. She gets more confessionals than anybody else. And then I got voted out. So I'm like, so maybe it wasn't good that I had so many confessionals.
Well, Jean Robert actually only got 19, funnily enough. I thought he would have got a lot more than that. Todd got the most in your season, just for those wondering, of course, on China. Todd got 60. So, there you go. PG got second most, 43, and Amanda got third most, 40. So, there you go. I'm a stats man, Leslie. I like knowing these things. So
that's interesting. I didn't know that. See, yeah. You just enlightened me. So.
There's people out there who have their way of doing it. One final stat. Sorry, I'm just harping on about this. You do hold a record. You got the highest average number of confessionals on Survivor China. So in terms of the episodes you won and the amount of confessionals, you got 5.33 confessionals an episode, beating Todd, who only got 4.62 confessionals an episode. So congratulations, Leslie, you do hold a record.
All right, look at that. I didn't even know.
Well, you're learning now. You're going to hunt down these stats.
That's hilarious.
Yes.
My claim to fame.
Yes.
Whatever.
Going to put it on your resume. Now, we've got a few listed questions, and I'll close it out with our final 5. Everybody, of course, can send in listener questions. survivoroz@hotmail.com.au. Check us out on social media to see who we've got on each week. Now, RB Ledstrom, he messages in generally every week, and he's got a couple of questions here. Now, I don't know about his wording of this question. I can see what he's asking, but I don't know if I like how he's worded it. I'll read this out, what he wrote, but hopefully this doesn't sound too offensive. RB asks, which Bible thumper is more disappointing, Will for his mind rape of Shireen, or Mike for his weasel move at the auction and him not giving Shireen the idol at Tribal Council? So I'm guessing the polite way of asking that question is, which religious person is more disappointing, Will for his talk to Shireen, or Mike for his move at the auction? That's a nicer way of putting it.
Oh, you know what? I am not one to point fingers at somebody. You know, the truth is, even if you love the Lord, even if you are a quote Bible thumper, if you're you're still a human being, and you make mistakes. I think both of them are doing the best that they can, and they're human. I really don't want to say that I think either one of them is making a bad representation. I remember one of the biggest lessons I learned on Survivor China is that I can't ruin God. Mm-hmm. You know, when I went out there, I was so afraid I was going to mess up and make him look bad. And, you know, there were some times I did mess up. They didn't show all my mess ups, which blew me away. I thought for sure they were going to show when I said a cuss word and when I, lied one time. I thought they were going to show all of that, and they didn't. But I beat myself up for it for so long. And then finally God was like, listen, I'm God. You're not. Like, I can protect myself. You're human. It's not so much about the things that we do wrong as much as what do we do with it? You know, are we going to learn from that? Are we going to turn away from it? Are we sorry? Or are we going to continue to act that way? And I don't think either one of them are going to continue. You know what I mean?
Was that a message from God just saying thank you? Like, that was like a perfect timing there, Leslie.
Oh no, yeah, I just got a message. Sorry, I didn't even realize
that. No, I just thought that was perfect timing. It was like, thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
But RB also actually, I know this is kind of a question that I think we've sort of brought up with you before, but RB asks, is it a disadvantage to be a devout Christian in the game of Survivor?
No, of course not. No, I mean, it's different. You play the game different, and you do that because not so much that you're trying to make God look good, because, like I said, that's not in our power to do. He doesn't depend on us for that. He's perfectly capable on his own. But the thing is you've got a different set of values, and you play within those values. So it's more of a challenge. But to be honest with you, it's like that in life. I mean, a lot of people before I went on Survivor were like, oh, you're a Christian, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the world is a place filled with backstabbing and conniving and, everything that's on Survivor. It's just a microcosm of what goes on in every society in the world, right? And we're not trying to get out of society. We're living in society. So how do we do that in the best way. And when we do mess up, which we all mess up because we're human, like, what do we do with that? Do we, learn from it and grow, or do we? Well, the way I say it is, you can either define yourself by your mistakes, or you can let them refine you. And that's what I choose to do. And so I think as a Christian playing the game, it's different, and it's a challenge in a different way, but it's definitely not a disadvantage.
Good way of putting it. A good explanation. Thanks, RB. Zachary Chong. Now, Zachary is an avid listener of this show, and he, last few weeks, has sent in pretty much the same question each week, because... Bit of background on this question, Leslie, quickly. At the start of this year, in the lead up to season 30, a group of us here on Survivor Oz sat down and ranked every single Survivor contestant in the history of Survivor, all 442 of you. Only took us 34 hours. Yes, we have no life. Basically, we all came and we had to put up, like, we went, okay, no, but 442, we're going to put up this person. And then if 3 of us on the panel disagreed, we could veto it, and the other person had to choose again, and so on and so forth, and we whittled it down to number 1. You came in at number 314, and
okay.
Zachary asks, how do you feel about being 314 in the rankings?
I don't know. I'm surprised I got that high, to be honest with you, because I wasn't on for very long, so I'm flattered, and you know what? I'm just thrilled to be a part of the 400 and whatever. Mm-hmm. I can't even believe that I get to say that I was even on the show. So to be ranked, at 314, not too bad.
Quickly going over it, you weren't the last ranked China person. You beat out Chicken was the lowest, Ashley was second lowest, Dave was just below you. So you beat out Dave, and you finished only just behind Aaron. And the highest ranked China person was Todd. He came in at 4th. So
yay! Good for him.
Yeah,
awesome.
made it deep in the game. But it was a lot of fun, Leslie. And I just always want to clarify to people, it is a hard task ranking 442. It's not easy.
Listen. I don't base my worth on my ranking. I have a whole lot of other, things.
Confessional count averages. That's what you do.
Yes. Oh, there you go. That's what I base my worth on, Ben. Come on.
Yes.
I'm just
do
not
it.
At all.
Zachary also actually adds at the end of his question, he says, also, tell Leslie she is my favourite pre-merge boot. There you go.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. I'm giving you a virtual hug.
There you go, Zachary. You got a virtual hug. Good job. Thanks for the questions, guys. As I said, always send them in to us, and we will put them to our weekly recap. But Leslie, we wrap up our recaps with 5 questions in terms of your opinions and how it's going. It gets easier as it gets closer to the end of the season. Now, the only recap you've done with us, you did Cagayan episode 4, as I said, with Noah. Just going over who you picked in that. Your tip to win at that point in the season was Wu. That's not too bad. He did finish second, so not pretty close. Your dark horse was Lindsay. She didn't last that too much longer. Next to go, you said Tash or Cass. And you said the player you were most similar to on Cagayan was Cass. Wow.
Yes. Okay. Well, you know what? That was like the 3rd episode, wasn't it? Like,
yes.
She changed a lot. But yeah, maybe in age about the same, but I think age is about all the similarities we have. But
all right, well, let's see how it goes this season. Leslie, who is your tip to win Survivor Worlds Apart?
Oh gosh, I hope it's Mike.
Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Who is your dark horse to win Survivor Worlds Apart?
Rodney.
Oh, please make it happen. Who's next to go? Who's getting voted out next week?
I would say probably Tyler.
Tyler. Okay. Now, this is a unique question. You got asked a question on Cagayan. The question at that point was, would you be on brains, brawn, or beauty? You said you would be on the fun/normal tribe. But this time around, Leslie, I will ask you, would you be on white collar, blue collar, or no collar?
Oh, gosh, probably no collar.
No collar?
Yeah, no collar. And I only say that because I don't really do anything that's blue or... I mean, I kind of do combination. So
that works. Are you still doing radio?
I do radio on the weekends, but I record it in advance, so it's not, like I work on the weekends. But I also have been back to teaching fitness classes, and so I'm still speaking and writing and all that good stuff. So
Fantastic.
I stay busy.
That's what you need to do. That's good to hear. All right. Final question then, and again, it doesn't have to be the players that are left. It can be anyone that has been on this season. Leslie, which player do you feel you were most similar to on Survivor Worlds Apart?
Probably. Well, it's funny. Probably Nina.
Nina.
Yeah, and it's funny. I knew her going in. And because I had met her at a couple of Survivor events, and I just adored her, and I just always really respected who she was as a person. So I was excited to watch her, and very sad to welcome her to the third voted out club. So,
hey, can I just add that we have our Oscars each year, which is our annual awards show. They're coming up in actually in May. Well, it is May now, the end of this month, and you will be up. There's the category this year. We started off. We had best first boot. Last year was best second boot. This year we're up to best third boot, Leslie. So you're up for an Oscar this year. You're automatically nominated.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited. I have chill bumps.
Campaign. I will tell you when it's closer. I will tell you that you can put it out there and get people to vote for you. You can win an Oscar.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'd like to thank the Academy and no, I'm kidding. That's so funny. Well, great. Oh, I look forward to that. That'll be fun.
I'll let you know. So when you say you knew Nina, so when you found out she was on Survivor, did you know she was going to be on it, or were you like, hey, I know her?
No, I had no idea. It was so funny. I actually, I saw her on Instagram or something, and I was like, oh, I love that girl. I remember meeting her, and so I went to be her friend, and she wrote to me. Or no, it was on my Facebook page, and I saw something that she had done, and I was like, oh, because I changed my Facebook page, and we weren't friends anymore. So I went to request her as a friend again, and she wrote to me, and she's like, is this really Leslie? Now that all this is going on with Survivor, I just want to make sure. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, oh, I'm going to be on the next season. I was like, oh my gosh, Nina, I had no idea. I just wanted to be your friend, I swear. So I had no idea. I was very excited though.
That's awesome. I mean, this season, I will say, from my personal perspective, I'm not pretending I knew Max. I don't know Max that well, but I had talked to Max over a year ago because I was put in contact with him that, hey, this guy teaches a class on Survivor. You should interview him on your show. So I very nearly interviewed him about a year or so ago. But I mean,
that's so cool.
Having said that, Max is quite well known in the Survivor community, of course, as well. So several players know him. That. Yeah, no, he's we had Richard on a few weeks ago, and Richard has been in his class and gave a speech to his students and all that sort of stuff. And I think in talking to RC from the Philippines, she knows Max very well. So yeah, he's very well known amongst some circles in Survivor. But that's the one time, Leslie, I've been able to say, hey, I sort of knew somebody before they went on that wasn't a returning player season.
That's hilarious.
Yes. So just a slight little bit to make my ego a little bit bigger there, Leslie. Anyway, I will say, though, always a pleasure having you on the show, Leslie. Thank you very much for your time. A lot of fun. Good luck with everything. And, we'll campaign for you with the Oscars and no doubt get you on again in the future. Hopefully on the Oscars award ceremony to win your award.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I will be so excited if that happens. So thank you for that.
There we go. Leslie Nease from the 15th season of China. Always a lot of fun having Leslie on the show from a great season. We love China. Just such a magnificent cast, and always a pleasure having anybody from that season on this show. Well, it's time to wrap up this recap, and as always, a few housekeeping matters to get to. If you haven't listened to the Oztopsy, that is already up and online. You can listen to it. You can watch my ugly face sitting there in front of a computer screen. If you'd rather do that, I don't know why you would, but it's available there. SurvivorOz.com. You can click on that. Amazing Race Oz with Noah and Colin. That is up to before the episode this week. Always a little bit delayed, but watch that and listen to that, I should say, and read Alex Morella's great recaps. If you're listening to this via iTunes or any other service that you haven't actually got to Survivor Oz before to get to this episode, head there, check out Clifton's fantastic written recaps as well. You can read opinions from Ozlet such as myself and see the best of Twitter and things along those lines. Jeff Probst's sexual innuendo of the week and all that jazz. That's with our episode recap on SurvivorOz.com. Now, few things I've mentioned in terms of the recap, and now we've obviously only got 3 more to do, with only 3 more episodes left of Survivor Worlds Apart. Now, I did say last week we were hoping to have Ethan Zahn on the show this week. We're still hoping to have Ethan on in the remaining 3 weeks. We're just hoping to obviously tie that down with him, so stay tuned. We do have other couple of people in the pipeline. It's kind of more on a rolling, floating schedule, if that makes sense. Again, it's trying to lock people down in certain weeks and basing it around their schedules. I will say that we've got Ethan lined up, hopefully to have him on. I will tease you in saying that our second last episode does look like it will be with Cass from, of course, Kangaroo. I don't need to tell you what season she's from. You know where Cass is from. Always a talkative person, to put that politely. So you know she's going to have some opinions. And for the finale, look, we're trying to lock in. I teased you last week that there's a winner who we've only had on the show once before, and that we're trying to get her back. And again, we're waiting for that to happen. We're hoping it will happen in some capacity, so stay tuned for that. And also are in talks with somebody who potentially could be on the next season, which they might be willing to talk more if they're campaigning to be on the next season. I'm trying to tease you as best as I can. Basically, look, fuck it. Kelly Wigglesworth hopefully could be coming back on the show too. We love our Kelly. You heard us talking about with Leslie, and we're going to do a lot of stuff to try and get her back on the show. But yeah, look, stay tuned. As I said, we are actively trying to lock these people in. It's always a floating schedule, so stay tuned to our website, our social media. We will put up details once we know, and then you can get your questions in and all that jazz. Also, I'm sounding like a broken down record. Oscars, we just spoke about it with Leslie then. I've been saying now for months, I'm going to say, not just weeks, that we're going to be announcing the categories. Well, voting starts in 3 weeks, so I'm going to have to pull my finger out and get those categories up there. And you will see how to vote and everything, and that is only a few weeks away. It's our biggest event we hold every year, the Oscars. We love it. They're fantastic, and get excited for them because they are just around the corner. And again, details coming soon. And also on a side note, to shamelessly plug a spin-off show of ours, if you're a fan of the Eurovision Song Contest, if you live anywhere outside of America and Europe or Australia and you've heard of the Eurovision Song Contest, Euro-Oz Vision is our latest podcast, completely separate from Survivor Oz. Obviously we put the Amazing Race Oz under the Survivor Oz banner, but Euro-Oz Vision is completely separate. It's got a different website, a different stream on iTunes, and different page on Facebook, different Twitter feed. It's all completely separate. Look for it, and Eurovision is just around the corner, so Euro-Oz Vision is here to talk you through it. Next week, in terms of the Oztopsy, may I also just add that I won't be hosting it. Noah and Colin will be hosting it, and hopefully it will be on Thursday. More than likely won't be live next week. Sorry, Catherine, if you are listening. So next week looks like it will be a pre-recorded Oztopsy, but again, website is how you stay in tune with that. Survivor Oz on Twitter, Survivor Oz on Facebook. Easiest way to stay on top of everything, and don't have to listen to me waffle on about this at the end of every single recap. Thanks to Leslie once again. It's been a pleasure having your company with you today here on Survivor Oz. Until we next speak again, my name is Ben, the Tribe has spoken. We will speak to you next time on The Trains.